I mean, if anyone's in the race to have a better haircut than Trump, then it's old Kim Jong.
Kim Jong Un.
Yeah. So is that like Kim Jong number one? Is that what that stands for?
Uno. Yeah, I believe so. He's Spanish, right?
Right.
He looks Spanish.
Spano-Korean. Yeah, I'd love to talk about North Korea and just sort of like where we're at and how all previous world leaders had basically put off dealing with Kim Jong-il. You know, was it Kim Jong-il? Was that the other one? Kim Jong-il? Yeah.
I think so.
That was his name on Team America. That's where I get my historical information about North Korea. I get my current information about North Korea.
Yeah,
from,
so Kim Jong-il was the dead one, probably because he was ill.
Well, that's
and
what
then
everyone
Kim
was waiting
Jong-un is the current one.
Yeah. So were previous presidents, not safe to talk about America, but I mean previous world leaders, were they just like banking on that the line would stop? Things would just change when Kim Jong-il passed away, or
I'm going to say that most of them were banking on it not happening on their watch, and the ones that had some
death or
something bad happening on their watch, yeah. Whereas most of the longer,
he's saying that Kim Jong-il's death was bad.
I'm saying that most of them just weren't serious about it, because if you get a security briefing that says that North Korea might develop nuclear weapons within 10 years, and you've got 3 years left of a 4-year term, which is your second term, then that's not an issue you got to deal with. It just isn't. And if it's an issue that you can't deal with and you don't have to deal with it, then that slides right off your plate.
Yeah, just slide that nuclear holocaust down the table for the next president to inherit.
Yeah, basically. And
responsible leadership there.
It is what it is. You fight the battles that you can win, and I don't begrudge any of them for not tackling the issue in of itself.
What if they dropped the nuclear bomb on you? Would you begrudge them then?
Yeah, you would. I mean, ultimately, you got to be outcome driven. But my point is that there's a level of understanding that I have with them for not wanting to deal with it. What's interesting now, though, is that there's no kind of looking back to say, how did we get here? Were balls dropped? Were issues ignored to get us to here? And now it's all the narrative seems to be focusing around somehow this is being all Trump's fault and how Trump hasn't got the finesse to deal with it. Whereas there's been 20 years to deal with this problem. You know, Bush could have been dealing with this problem. Obama could have been dealing with this problem. Clinton could have been dealing with this problem. People who I would say...
Clintons were a bit stuck in Benghazi, weren't they?
Well, people who would otherwise...
And Haiti.
Right, and Haiti, yeah. Well, there's a lot of work in Haiti that the Clinton Foundation is doing. Good work.
Solid work.
And these people who the mainstream media would love to say are wise diplomats and have the finesse and political nous on dealing with this kind of situation, as opposed to Trump, as opposed to fumbling Trump. And yet those people didn't deal with it, did they? They didn't deal with it. So I don't have a problem with someone not doing something that they couldn't do. Fair enough. But it's interesting how little memory there seems to be by the media on this when it comes to context and putting Trump within that context and the current situation.
So I think we all witnessed a bit of meme magic last year, and just a sprinkle of meme magic got Trump through the primaries and running for president. I just can't see why that same little bit of meme magic couldn't be used to sort of show the North Korean people
they don't get internet, bro.
What a douchebag their leader is.
They don't get internet, bro.
Don't they?
No, they don't get internet
at all.
From what I understand, the only internet that they'll get is literally like a bulletin service that's allowed internally in the country, as in the country controls all the communication in and out. So the only thing they'll allow on their quote unquote internet would be literally whatever the government puts up.
What level of IT people are they hiring in North Korea? Is that hackable? Can you get into the North Korean information systems?
Yeah, that's a good question. You probably could. What you could actually disseminate, I don't know. I don't know a huge amount on the Korean internet. North Korean internet. All I know is that
Well, have they got fiber optic?
all I know is there's very little of it, and
Probably still have dial-up.
probably, and yeah, and a lot of it's like just completely buttoned up, completely buttoned up. I mean, look at this. Like the guy's Kim Jong Un's picture on the internet is even photoshopped.
Yeah.
Like there isn't even a real likeness on his official set.
You gotta
data
love
set.
Wikipedia. Yeah.
You know, you got to go to third-party sources to get even a real-life picture of him, not a doctored state picture that makes him look like an oil painting from the 1800s.
Yeah, you know what they say, like, information, knowledge is power. Like, I just think there's undermining him by. I mean, they've probably got such a grip on that population in terms of, the outside world is bad and always has been. So there's just no way of breaking through the cognitive, through the hearts and minds of people, because they're just being so fed with propaganda that anything they see they're just going to interpret as an attempt to undermine North Korea and a threat. But I mean, there's just got to be a way of sneaking some like, even, I mean, you could even drop memes on like printed A4 pieces of paper and just fly over the country and just drop them.
Well, the best option, and I don't know enough about the state of internet security in North Korea, but the best option would be...
They use McAfee?
I imagine John McAfee would be highly against the concepts of the principles of the North Korean regime. For all his faults, he is very free speech. So, yeah. But
is he free profits as well?
He's free speech, free profit, yeah. And they have no profits in North Korea and no free speech. So the best way would be to try and, like you said, get something in through their data, because, and I don't think it'll be very effective. I don't think enough people even own the required platforms, meaning phones and tablets and PCs, to actually use that properly, to view it in any large number. The problem with flying planes over is exactly what it sounds like, because they would either see that as an aggressive act, which is very bad, or they would at least try and shoot the planes down, which is bad to very bad. And then you've got, American or whatever pilots and planes getting shot down and people getting killed. And
drones.
Well, maybe that's a good point. Maybe you could use a drone. But then you've got the other way, which is, again, they could be seen as an aggressive act, and they can start doing stuff like shelling South Korea because they're saying that we're employing warfare on them. It's not violent in our eyes, but in their eyes it's warfare, and they could use that as a credible provocation to aggression. So maybe, but it's risky. It goes directly into the category of escalation, and escalation is kind of what we wanted to talk about. What do we do with North Korea? What do you do with a state which is avowedly your enemy, has said that it wants to attack you, and now owns has owned ballistic missiles, will soon own intercontinental ballistic missiles, and we believe now owns nuclear warheads as well to go in them? What do you do with that state?
Well, like I've heard that all the power's switched off at night, and the only place that has power is the presidential. What does he call himself? Is he emperor?
God Emperor.
God Emperor.
Yeah.
The God Emperor. The palace of the God Emperor is the only thing that's lit up at night. So my solution would just be fly over at night and annihilate the only place with lights on.
He's the Dark God Emperor.
The Dark God Emperor.
Yeah. Trump obviously is the Light God Emperor.
Yeah. Maybe they should challenge him to a duel.
That'd be amazing.
Trump would call that a bad deal. Would he call that a bad deal, or a
mano a mano? Settle this mano a mano.
That would solve everyone's problems, wouldn't it?
It would.
I think all the left would just love it if Trump sort of rode off on a white horse and challenged Kim Jong on his black dragon to a fight to the death.
A black Komodo dragon.
Well, I don't know. Probably it was like one of those dragons with the people underneath it, wouldn't it? But
oh right, yeah, that's permissible. Permissible war animal for this match.
Yeah, I guess so. Do they have animals in North Korea, or have they all been eaten?
I believe they're still able to get rat.
Right. Okay. Well,
And I think they can farm some small chickens.
So he'd be kind of like he'd be standing on the rats and like mushing with them, I guess, like a rat chariot.
Like like a kind of skate, rat skate.
Yeah, rat skates.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually got me thinking if that's possible. Although you'd have to like super glue the rats to the bottom of a board of
You have
wood
to
or
find
something.
some sturdy rats.
Yeah. Plus I don't think that would pass any kind of ethical
So if they've
consideration.
got a rat problem, why are they starving?
Do they have a rat problem? Well, the rats ate all the food, I thought.
Right, but then
They all
can eat the
grain.
rats.
Well, it's inefficient transfer of energy from food stock to from vegetable food stock to animal food stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
It depends if you can get all your your meat and veg from a rat.
From a rat. I mean, going back to it, what do you do with that kind of country? I mean, if this just reminds me a lot of kind of the whole appeasement that was going on in Europe before World War II, where it was always kind of like, okay, well, we've got somebody who we can clearly see has got violent and expansionist intent and is unhinged, and they want and discuss warfare with the rest of Europe in that case. And, nothing got done until it was too late. And then eventually the hand was forced. And there's something to be said for that because, self-defense is generally seen as the only legitimate use of force. So maybe it is a case of just waiting for him to make the first move and fuck up and then respond and retaliate to that. And maybe that retaliation, and then even the retaliation is going to be problematic. Let's use that word.
It's like it's like one thing. It's like the Cold War. So in one respect, you play chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other option is that the world needs to stop focusing on Trump as the problem and start pressuring China.
Yeah,
and it needs to be a united pressuring of China into saying, look, something needs to happen, and it's not going to happen unless you get involved and help apply the pressure from all angles, because they're essentially probably got the most leverage
by far. They're keeping him propped up almost single-handedly. There was a lot of food that was shipped from Russia, I know, but from what I understand, a lot of that's actually decreased in recent years. So at this point, all of the
I can't see Putin sort of seeing any real benefit to propping up. Whereas I can see that China would be doing it almost as like a bait. It's like we're going to do what we want to do.
Correct. They're doing it almost as a puppet.
Yeah.
It's almost a distraction or a lure for the US to have something else to hate instead of them, if that makes sense. And that's even the case ever since the inception of North Korea. Yeah. You can make the historical argument here, but essentially, North Korea invaded South Korea, and as we can plainly see, South Korea was a just far better culture and society. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. Maybe it is. But North Korea would have been defeated in the Korean War, and Korea would have been unified back in the 50s. And it was China who stepped in, fighting American troops to do so and to win back the territory that then eventually became consolidated as North Korea. So it's all been China creating this mess right from the start. And the reason they've done it is to put a black mark on the aspirations of America. And it's been nothing but terrible for the people there, because, like I said, if they hadn't done that, there would be no North Korea. South Korea would be all there is. And South Korea is an incredibly prosperous, developed, rich country that, I'm sorry to say it, but the North Koreans would be fucking lucky to live in a society that good. And that's essentially what they were cheated out of by China intervening in the Korean War. And that's been the policy of China ever since, basically. It's prop up North Korea, that's the thing you do, to piss off the Americans, to piss off democracy, blah, blah, blah. So it's nothing more than that. That's the reason why they keep them going. There's nothing, it's only political and, to display their own power that they do this.
Yeah, so it's interesting that, I'm sure that world leaders recognise this, but yet, they're just willing to ignore it because the benefits of the benefits of trading with China far outweigh getting nuked, I guess.
Well,
I guess that's the logic there, isn't it?
that's funny to put that in words, yeah, because that's it. It's don't piss off China, but it's getting to the point now of you can either piss off China or potentially risk getting nuked by a mad regime. And at some point, if this all dies down and without a shot being fired in the next 20 years, then fantastic, great. If it doesn't though, and it ends up with nukes getting launched out of North Korea preliminarily, that's a hell of a payment you've made to have people getting nuked because you didn't want to piss off China, because you didn't want to ruffle feathers.
China buys a lot of coal,
Yeah, good customers.
Make a lot of shoes.
And the question here is, what do you do? Like I said, it's self-defense is usually seen as the only just way to conduct war, and that's great. But when you've got potentially someone dropping a nuke on you, do you just eat that cost up front? You just say to yourself, yeah, well, we'll lose maybe 500,000 civilians. Let those first couple of nukes hit, and then we'll think about what we do next. That's tough. That's a tough calculation.
Well, I guess they've done it before. 9/11, Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, and all of those things are absolutely right. But it's exactly it. But all those things are seen as tragedies. So
I was being facetious there.
No, I don't think you were. I think maybe you were intending.
I was alluding to truther.
Oh, you were going down the
intentional. They ate it intentionally, job. But yeah.
Well, no, but my point is that
outcome-wise, they essentially ate those.
Yeah, and it took that to be able to move in that direction, and that was a few. I think 3,000 people for 9/11, and it was a few thousand more maybe for Pearl Harbor. But we're talking nukes here. So if they launch a couple and they hit a couple of population centers, it could be South Korea, it could be Japan, it could be parts of America. You could be talking millions of deaths potentially.
Oh, yeah.
That
hits a major city in America. But
that's a crazy thing to just be saying. Okay, whether you want to go conspiracy theory, it's a planned attack and it's a goaded attack. That's not the point. The point is that's a hell of a thing to ask for, to be able to then have a just war. Even the police won't do that. Even the police, if they see you pull a gun, they will not wait for you to fire a few shots first.
Yeah.
If they see you waving a gun around, they'll shoot you, and that I'm absolutely okay with that concept. And this is the same thing, but between nations. If you've got somebody saying, "I want to build nukes to use them on you,"
it's at what point does the so if we talk about that cop situation, if they're they'll have their bottom line of when they're going to take action to protect themselves. It's like at what point is the evidence going to be sufficient enough that we go, actually, you know what, it's we need to act now because it's not worth the risk.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean,
it's potentially testing a hydrogen bomb or whatever it was today. Is obviously potentially not enough. Is it
Well, testing a hydrogen bomb, if you want to use that analogy of a policeman and a person threatening a policeman with a weapon, testing the hydrogen bomb, you could argue, is more testing the gun works in your backyard kind of thing. And the way the policeman would say is, do I credibly believe that my life is in danger? Not, is there bullets coming at me, but do I credibly believe that my life is in danger? So it would be the same for the country, and the question there would be is there a credible belief that one of those countries will be attacked? And for me, the test would be, is there the capability? One, which it looks like there is, or very, very, very soon will be, the full capability to do it. And then the second part of that test is, will it be used? And this is the interesting part, because I haven't seen a official statement from North Korea saying that they want to use the weapons directly at a target, but I've seen a statement saying that they want the ability to be able to use the weapons at certain targets. And that is a very, very razor's edge distinction. It's a little bit like saying, I want a gun that's able to kill cops versus saying, I want this gun so that I can kill a cop tomorrow kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is a very razor's edge distinction.
Yeah, maybe North Korea is doing a very good job at PR considering where they're starting from, because America hasn't got a good track record of intervention. So it's not hard. It's not hard if things start happening for them to go, well, on that razor's edge, well, we actually haven't done any aggressing here. We're doing what we have the right to do, which is to develop ways to defend ourselves.
Right.
Like you could see how that narrative could be easily.
And I believe that's the way that they're advancing that narrative entirely. Yeah, absolutely. And they've been, in that sense, they've been careful. The question for me comes down to what do they want with a weapon, right? So do they want it, seriously, what do they want with a weapon? Do they want it purely as a defense, or do they actually want to potentially use it some other way? Let's put it that way. So if it's purely a defense, then okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, and let's hope that it never comes to it. That's always been the case since both Russia and the US had nuclear weapons. If it's something else, though, if it's a case of they might want to take a pop, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but we're talking about a state that is not entirely sound of mind. If they want to take a pop, like, for example, launch one rocket and blow it up and just see what happens, and then see if they get attacked back or not, that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying it's a possibility. And then at that point, it'll be a question of, well, what do you do? Because do you retaliate or do you not retaliate? If you don't retaliate, then you've just said that a rogue state can launch a nuke and blow it up over one of your cities. And as long as it's one nuke, you're going to let it slide. So I don't think that's reasonable. And then if you're going to retaliate, what are you going to retaliate with? Are you going to just arbitrarily pick a city of theirs to destroy as if you're playing like 2-player whack-a-mole? Yeah. Or are you going to say, well, we're just going to go for full takeover? In which case you're committing hundreds of thousands of troops. In which case you're talking about, well, let me just finish quickly. In which case you're talking about the full invasion of the other country to fully demilitarize them. And in which case we're back at square one, which is what we're talking about right now. Because if you're saying those are the risks, then go in now. Go in before there's any chance of nukes.
I guess the question that's not
although even that may be beyond the pale now.
And the question that's sort of probably what's not really being discussed as well is, it's one thing to say, do we retaliate? But then you're retaliating against how many millions of people who are being subjugated, whether they're aware of it or not, by a despot. And then you have to factor in, are their deaths worth the preservation of potential deaths in the States? And there's some mental fuckery to work through in terms of collateral damage there. There's some you'd have to be one objective, cold, calculated motherfucker to work through those numbers.
The ultimate call on any kind of preemptive action will be, is the threat large enough? Yeah. Which I would say right now, the answer is probably yes, the way I see it. And then the second part of that would be, if the threat is large enough, what are you willing to sacrifice now to safeguard a potential bigger disaster in the future? And that answer will essentially give you a solution that you're willing to employ. If you're willing to sacrifice armies and potentially some South Koreans and potentially, well, not potentially, very likely, a certain amount of North Korean civilians as well, if you're willing to sacrifice all those three elements to fully take over the country and demilitarize it, then you might as well get it over with. If the answer to that's no, then you go back to the economic sanctions, which is something you can do in the short term. But in reality, you've just gone for the long-term option, which is wait and see, and you're betting on the fact that nothing bad's going to happen.
Yeah,
that's all it is, really. At the end of the day, those are kind of your two options. Like I said, this reminds me back of just pre-World War II. I mean, what were the options back then? The options were appease Hitler, go to war with Hitler early, or economic sanctions on Hitler. And back in the day, there were some economic sanctions on Hitler. Didn't do a lot, did it? World War II started. There was people calling for early war. Those people weren't listened to. And eventually we declared war when too many countries got invaded by Nazi Germany. And that's what happened.
Yep.
And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying that North Korea is like Nazi Germany. And I'm not saying their events going to repeat themselves. I'm saying that is those are the the markers on the board that we've got are very similar. The outcome might end up being different, but the markers on the board are very similar, and the choices available are very similar.
So I think what I'd like to see is if any one of our Zero listeners could Photoshop Kim Jong-un riding a rat chariot against Donald Trump on the blazing white pony, and then we'll definitely put that up as the backdrop to this upload. We'll distribute that
for the next video.
That amazing picture at some later point.
We're looking forward to that. Kim Jong-un, Skaven riding beast champion versus the Age of Sigmar glory of the God Emperor Trump fighting a holy battle against the forces of darkness.